Lesson 53 Profiler. 1. What the profiler is. The profiler in React is a tool that allows you to measure the rendering performance of a component tree. Its goal is to help you detect which parts of your application take too long to render, so you can identify bottlenecks and optimize performance. It can be used programmatically, by wrapping specific parts of the UI with the profiler, or visually through the Profiler panel in React Developer Tools. 2. How it works. When you wrap a part of your UI with the profiler, React begins to record every time that section of the component tree commits an update. Each time a commit occurs, React calls a callback that provides information about how long it took to render that portion of the UI. This callback receives useful data for analysis: a label identifying the profiled section, the phase, for example, whether it is the initial mount or an update, the actual rendering duration, and an estimate of how expensive it would be to render the entire tree without optimizations. By comparing the actual duration with the non-optimized estimate, you can assess how effective your optimizations are, for example, through memoization or avoiding unnecessary renders. 3. What it's used for. It allows you to identify which components or subtrees are expensive to render, those parts whose rendering takes the most time or happens very frequently. It helps detect unnecessary renders, situations in which a component re-renders even though its input, props or state, hasn't changed in a meaningful way. Reducing these unnecessary renders can significantly improve performance, especially in large applications. It allows you to measure the effectiveness of optimizations. If you apply techniques such as memoization, conditional rendering, splitting components, or others, the profiler shows whether these changes actually reduce render times. It supports a data-driven approach to optimization. Instead of guessing, you can rely on objective measurements of rendering cost. 4. Warnings and best practices. Using the profiler adds additional overhead. Recording render times requires extra work from React, so constant use can affect performance. It's best used selectively, when you are investigating performance issues. Results may vary between development and production. The development environment includes extra overhead, so performance data may not always reflect the real user experience. For more accurate measurements, tests in production or in a production profiling build are recommended. A complex subtree is not always a problem. Sometimes a costly render may be unavoidable. What matters is whether it happens unnecessarily or too often, and whether optimizations can be applied. 5. When you should use it. You should consider using the profiler when your application begins to have many components, routes, or dynamic data, and you start noticing rendering slowdowns. You introduce logic or components that are potentially expensive, large lists, heavy operations, many nested components, and want to verify their impact. You are evaluating optimizations like memoization, conditional rendering, lazy loading, or others, and want to measure their real effectiveness. You detect unexpected multiple renders after a user interaction. The profiler can help locate what is causing those re-renders.